What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of SSPN Live. I'm Jude, that's Ethan. As you guys can see, Ethan's video is a little choppy today, but luckily we can still hear him completely. And I think on his end, it's showing up as completely normal. So this is just a random thing that happened literally right before we got live that we're trying to figure out. And testing it out, you can still hear Ethan. So we apologize for that, but we're doing the best with what we can.
Yeah, for the small sample of you that are looking at, I know it's a very small sample. You'll be very pleased with that.
There you go. That's one way to put it, Ethan. But we do have some Spurs news to talk about. We've got some Spurs games to talk about, Ethan. And we had a little bit of a hiatus last week. And that was literally just because I had some 4th of July festivities. Ethan, I didn't necessarily talk with what you had going on, but I'm sure you had something going on during the 4th of July week. But that was kind of why we were out this past week. But there has been some stuff happening, like I just alluded to earlier. We've had some Summer League games, and we've also had another trade, Ethan. We were the third team that helped facilitate a trade between the Bulls and, of course, the Sacramento Kings to get DeMar DeRozan to Sacramento. And on top of that, Ethan, we picked up another veteran presence who has 2 years left on his deal, someone with championship experience, and really, as much as he's 32, 33, kind of in that modern 3-4, 3-and-D build. Harrison Barnes, of course, has been acquired by the San Antonio Spurs. And it's really ironic, Ethan, because when you think about it, you've got CP3 probably in the starting lineup now, and Harrison Barnes acquired. That's a point guard. That's a wing. It's what we were asking for all draft. And on top of that, we got Stephon Castle as well with the 4th pick, Ethan. And we wouldn't have been able to acquire Harrison Barnes if it wasn't for trading that 8th pick, Ethan. So we've kind of been able to see the vision now of what the Spurs were trying to do now that we're here. What are your thoughts on all of it?
Yeah, able to fix us prior to the off without losing anything. I mean, no disrespect to the way playing cut ties with how that to for us to add CP3 as a veteran presence at point guard, like you said, that 3-and-D space can also provide a couple of. I see a comment choppy as well.
Maybe a little bit. I can hear you. Maybe a little bit here and there, but we're just working with what we can today, guys. So again, we apologize for that.
I have to slow down a hair. Harrison, I think his most underability is himself as a connective piece. We've seen him on the Golden State Warriors at the beginning of that dynasty. He doesn't necessarily need can as from the offensive bucket if that put up like you didn't have it going for some get and step on to kind of a 3rd or 4th option on really talented playoff option, or even teams in Golden State as Sacramento. I think extremely valuable pick. But Stephon has
right.
So he got to continue to contribute. He did in the Summer League as get into and even shooter Jude are two things that kind of jumped off the switch in the Summer League. So a lot of positive. Damn, I can't hear me.
Yeah.
San Antonio.
Yeah, it's kind of getting a little choppy for me on the other end. I was able to pick up most of what you said there, Ethan. And essentially, of course, you just talked about how he's going to bring that veteran experience, of course, being a 3-and-D wing who can kind of slide in to that 4 or the 3, on top of, like you said, having Stephon Castle. And, we'll get into some rotations here, Ethan. And, you never know what could happen with the Spurs. Like we played Shetty off the bench last season. And then on top of that, maybe I really think CP3 is going to start, but with the Spurs, maybe they do put Stephon in that starting role. I really doubt that, as I say that, especially with Trey Jones on the roster. But maybe you could see Stephon at the starting 3. Um, and on top of that, Ethan, you could also see if he was starting at the three, you could potentially see him. Or you could see Harrison Barnes coming off the bench. And Ethan, you just texted me a really good idea here in the chat. I think that's exactly what you should do. And I'll hold down the fort here while you go back. So for everybody that was listening to that, I kind of got thrown off in a little bit of my point right there. But Ethan is going to go ahead and go to his laptop and pop in on there. So that should definitely help with the quality. So I'm just going to go ahead and hang out with you guys and kind of give my thoughts on it until we get Ethan back here. Some of the comments that y'all said here. Robert Ball says, Bontemps on the Hoop Collective called the Spurs moves a smart semi-tank for the 2025 draft. And the other interesting part about that is we have multiple draft picks next season. I believe we still hold Atlanta's pick for 2025. I don't know if that's going to be as good as maybe we thought, as it looks like Trae Young is still going to be a Hawk. They kind of just decided to go with him after moving DeJounte Murray to the Pelicans. So I don't know how good of a pick that'll be, but that is another pick that we'll have in next year's draft. But I kind of like the way that he put that because, and me and Ethan had kind of texted about this for a while all of this was going on. And this is the way that I looked at it, at least by adding CP3 and Harrison Barnes, you're kind of incrementally, increasing the timeline, if you will. I don't know if that was the best way to word that, but you're moving up the timeline. You're adding, veteran experience. You're adding players, with championship experience. Well, not necessarily Chris Paul, but y'all know what I mean here. Lots of playoff experience. Both of those guys do have that. And with all of that being said, both of those guys, bringing in both of them, it adds stability at that point guard position and the three and the four, while also bringing in that veteran experience. And I believe we have Ethan in here. The video is still a little choppy, Ethan,
Yep.
but we'll see if the audio is a little bit better.
I think it's going
Okay. Well, I
better.
did just hear you there. I don't know. We'll see what
Okay.
people say in the comments if y'all can hear Ethan a little bit
All right.
better. I can hear Ethan right now. Y'all please let us know.
I don't know what y'all talking about. Maybe information in the chat, that'd be helpful.
Well, with that being said, Ethan, what I was talking about was essentially just CP3 and Harrison Barnes kind of incrementally increasing the timeline, if you will. It just in the fact that, they're not guys who are going to, thrust us into championship contention, but they're going to add more experience, a little bit more versatility. And here's what Robert Ball says to put it perfectly. Vet experience on short-term contracts with trade asset potential while gaining trade picks. I think that's a great way to put it. Harrison Barnes is on a 2-year deal, so that'll be something to watch. And then CP3 is on a 1-year deal, so it really seems like he is going to be kind of a 1-year rental while we kind of train Stephon to be in that role moving forward. But unfortunately, we do not still have good connection for you, Ethan.
Comment everything. If you can hear me, I'm gonna reset and I'll come back. So keep holding down the.
Okay, I'm just gonna go through our rundown for the time being, just to let you know. Again, guys, apologies for all of that. Ethan worked from home today, and literally right before we got on stream, the internet, the Wi-Fi, it just started to take a poop on him. And as Eddie P says in the comments here, Ethan got the PS1 graphics, which is very, very unfortunate. Too Clutch Corey says Ethan on that 1988 VHS cam. And it's so funny because most of you guys who are in here have seen, our normal episodes. You've seen a clip, you've seen our live streams, and we've never really had this issue. Maybe, I pop back a little bit. But at the same time, or I pop back. I mean, maybe I pop out a little bit here or there. There's been a little bit of connection stuff, but usually it pops back on pretty quickly. Not the case tonight, unfortunately, for our guy, Ethan. But again, going back into our rundown, Harrison Barnes acquired in that 3-team trade. And on top of that, we also got a 2031 pick swap just for being involved in that deal. I'm sure a lot of y'all saw the meme floating around where it's Brian Wright photoshopped on this guy, and it's trade offer with the little yellow triangle exclamation point emojis, and it's Brian Wright, and it's I receive an NBA player and an unprotected pick swap. You receive nothing. And so, shout out to Brian Wright for that. We're getting those assets, as much as right now, we're joking about those picks being 11 to 12 year olds, being middle schoolers, et cetera, et cetera. At the same time, in 2030, when Wemby's in his prime, those are some pick swaps that could come in handy down the line. But yeah, I also made a bunch of different rotations for you guys that, I just thought of potential lineups. So I'll just kind of run through that because that's what me and Ethan were going to run through prior. Um, but again, Harrison Barnes and a 2031 pick swap in the Bulls Sacramento trade where DeMar DeRozan was sent to Sacramento. So basically a free veteran 3-4 and a free pick swap as well. So some of the potential rotations that we could have now that we know these guys are coming in. Well, here, actually, let me stop myself, not to go all over the place, but I remembered there was some Spurs news that came out right before the show started, and it's basically what allowed the Harrison Barnes trade to happen. We had to get rid of a lot of guys on the cap, essentially. There's still a chance that some of them could come back, but we did waive 4 different players. And also, Raekwon Gray was sent to Chicago in that trade as well, which I forgot to mention also. That was announced today. We had to waive Charles Bassey as a necessary step to complete the Harrison Barnes trade, but Jeff McDonald from the San Antonio Express News reported that the Spurs are investigating ways to bring Bassey back, but that's also with the asterisk that he clears waivers. It looks like Julian Champagnie survived the trade. There were a lot of rumors floating around that he was someone who was going to have to get waived in order to bring in Harrison Barnes salary-wise. But I think the Raekwon Gray move, although this hasn't been made official, I don't believe you can trade two-way contracts. So I think his contract got converted, which allows us to kind of offload that salary and keep Julian. But again, Charles Bassey waived, and here were the other 4 players that I mentioned. 4 players, free agent rights that were renounced. That was Dominic Barlow. We already kind of knew that. David Duke Jr., Sandro Mamukelashvili, and Cedi Osman. I believe Barlow and Cedi we kind of already knew about, but David Duke Jr. and Mamu had been offered those qualifying offers, and we had to renounce those today. Now, granted, with that being said, we still have 2 roster spots left, as well as 2 two-way contracts because we traded Raekwon Gray away. So I think some names to watch there. Definitely Mamu is one to watch for sure. We saw the pictures and the Instagram posts from Victor Wembanyama in the Spurs practice facility with Sandro Mamukelashvili. We remember the comment where he called him an alien last year. And then on top of that, he just finished the season really well. So I really hope we bring him back. I don't think anybody else is going to necessarily offer Mamu more money than us. I mean, maybe that could happen. Still, it would be super low. I highly doubt that. I think we probably do get Mamu back in San Antonio. And then David Duke Jr., I think, is another name to watch just because we signed him to a full-time contract at the end of the season. He is scheduled to be on the Spurs Summer League team. Maybe he could end up back on another two-way as well. That's something to keep an eye on. But maybe he could end up, being that other roster spot that is filled. With all of that being said, there's a lot of options now for the Spurs. They've got Victor Wembanyama. Do they necessarily want to use those 2 roster spots on a Mamu, and a David Duke Jr.? Or maybe they just want to go with Mamu, and there's some other veteran out there that could provide more value than a David Duke Jr. who wants to come play with Victor Wembanyama. So wanted to get that out of the way. The last thing I'll say on this, I'll say one thing. This is my argument. Okay, this is my pitch here. As it looks like Ethan is back in here, I'm not sure if it is going to be better. Let's see. It doesn't look like it, Ethan. Unfortunately, you know what you could try? I
What's
think we
that?
tried this. You could maybe try coming on from your phone or going on your hotspot on your phone.
Let me see if I can figure.
I think you can. I on my laptop, I use my hotspot a lot at certain places, covering games, but places where me and you have spent a lot of time in the past, Ethan. So if you connect that to your laptop, maybe that will provide some better connection. But while
Try.
while Ethan tries that, going back to what I was about to say is that I think, well, I don't think. This is just my hope for the SSPN channel, honestly. I hope that Dominic Barlow gets his third two-way contract to come back for the Spurs. That was what I was going to get to before we get into these rotations that I've had written down. And again, we appreciate you guys working with us tonight. Apologies for all the technical difficulties. But, and Ethan, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take you off the screen here for a second, if that's cool. I don't even know if he heard me, but we're going to go ahead and and take him off the screen here just for a second until he gets some better connection. Hopefully, we will hope that that hotspot idea will work out. But again, the other rotations that I had, I came up with a bunch. I'm not saying all of these are going to happen. I'll kind of tell you guys which ones I think is probably more likely, but I just wanted to come up with a bunch because there are a lot of potential things that we could do. And we saw last year with Jeremy Sochan at the starting point guard, the Spurs are open to testing some things. I'm not saying that that's something that we should necessarily do again, but I'm just saying that we have shown it in the past. So I'm kind of keeping my eyes open and my mind open for some of these rotations. And I see a lot of y'all's comments here. I'm going to get through this and then I'm going to get to some of those. So this is what I personally would do if I could set the rotations for the Spurs going into next season. So I'd have CP3 starting, Devin Vassell at the 2, Harrison Barnes at the 3, Jeremy Sochan at the 4, and Victor Wembanyama at the 5. Having Harrison and Jeremy together, I mean, that's 2 6'8" guys. That adds a lot of length. Obviously, Harrison would bring that 3-and-D shooting. CP3 is not the same CP3 that we've known throughout his career. Obviously, he's almost 40 years old. So it looks like Ethan is back in here. Let's see. Hello? We can, oh my goodness, it's working. Yes. Okay. This is looking good for me, guys. The comments, tell us if this works.
I just spilled tea all over my. I cannot catch a break.
Oh,
For dinner,
well,
it was basically raw. My Wi-Fi's working, and I spilled water all over myself.
Today's just been. This is called getting back in the swing of things after taking a week off, right, Ethan?
Apparently so. This is the rust. Work through.
Okay. Chris Salmon says much better. So I'm so glad that this is working out. And you look great also. I'm not just telling you that. Seriously, the quality is solid. But as Muhammad here, he says, I don't think we can give another two-way contract to Barlow. The limit was 2 times, I believe. So that just ruins my dreams. I'm going to go cry myself to sleep tonight. But Ethan, what are your thoughts on the Harrison Barnes trade now that we got you here?
The Harrison Barnes trade. Well, like I was saying before, when nobody could hear me, probably preferable for most people in the comments is when no one could hear me. But now that I'm here, I like the Harrison Barnes trade. I think he is a really solid 3/4. Immediately shores up the starting small forward position for us at 6'7". He's a very solid defender, and offensively, he can basically do anything that you need him to do. First and foremost, he'll be a 3-and-D spacer. He's just going to space the floor. And then secondly, if Devin Vassell, Victor Wembanyama, they can't get it going, he does have the ability to be an isolation scorer as well as a post-up scorer in kind of that mid-range area. And then I think his most useful skill will be his ability to be a connective piece. VHS to Blu-ray, to be a connective piece, because we saw what he was able to do when the Warriors were at the beginning of their dynasty as kind of the third or fourth option on that team as far as scoring the ball. He doesn't dominate the rock. He moves it. He moves well without the basketball as well in that Steve Kerr system. And then obviously in Sacramento, he just did whatever it took to win. And when you're behind De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, like, you don't necessarily have to be the go-to guy. So now for us, he will be, I think, a very similar role. And I think it's a very big improvement over at least Julian Champagnie at that small forward position. And any criticism you have of Keldon Johnson, whether that be defense or just being a 3-and-D guy in general, that's not a problem with Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, I think you summed that up perfectly, and I forgot to mention that as well. I think Harrison would be a great mentor to somebody like Keldon, and can hopefully, I mean, maybe Keldon is just capped out at the skills that we want him to be better at. Maybe that'll end up being the case. But as someone who's still 24 years old, bringing in a guy like Harrison Barnes, maybe he could give him some tips there and help him unlock some things as well. And I love this comment here from Spurs Spotlight with Chris, Spurs legend Dom Beasy. We appreciate that, Chris. I've been seeing you've been putting out some videos too. So if y'all want some more content, go check out his channel as well, Ethan. But what I was talking about right before you got in here, and I'm seeing some stuff in the comments as well. Michael Lowry's in here, and he has a different opinion than the one that I just had. Shout out to you being in here, Mike. I think that Harrison Barnes is a lock off the bench, which will allow the young guys to play. However, I could also see CP3 off the bench. I just don't think that both vets will start at once. And I just kind of said that if it was my choice, I'd have CP3, Devin, Harrison, Jeremy, and Victor Wembanyama in the starting lineup. But Ethan, when I was kind of making my spreadsheet for the roster, if you will, I could definitely see a world where a Harrison Barnes is the backup for. Or maybe, I mean, I don't really think he's going to be the starter. I think that we'll probably keep Jeremy there. But I could see a world where he is the backup four. We played Shetty at the backup four. He's 6'8". He can definitely play that position. Julian Champagnie is still on the roster. I don't know if he would necessarily be starting and getting those rotation minutes, but what we do have at the three is CD Sissoko and Keldon Johnson. And we've kind of been talking about, even with adding Stephon, that was something that was kind of up in the air. We weren't sure if maybe Keldon's going to go back to the starting lineup. I mean, I guess with Champagnie still on the roster, like I just said, maybe we start him again. I don't really see that personally. But at the same time, if CD Sissoko, although, we've only seen one summer league game from him, maybe you'd like to see a little bit more in the opening California Classic game. We'll get to that a little bit later. But if he's someone who can ascend, into a rotation player, that could potentially square up the three position for the Spurs, Ethan. And that's why my second lineup that I had, or second rotations that I had, and I may have not mentioned the bench in the first lineup I did because I think you came on here, Ethan. So let me read that. In the first rotations I had written down. So this is in the scenario where CP3, Devin, Harrison, Jeremy, and Wemby are the starting lineup. The backups could potentially be, because Sandro Mamukelashvili technically isn't on the team right now, Trey Jones, Stephon Castle, Keldon, Mamu, and Zach. But really, as we stand today, there's no guarantee that Mamu is going to be back. I mean, I would really expect him to. I mentioned that earlier, talked about the Instagram post from Victor with him. And also I think he's somebody that with the money, moves that we just had to make, he's somebody that we could sign on a very cheap contract as well. But, that could potentially be Keldon at the 4 with Julian Champagnie at the 3. That's been floating around a lot. But I know I'm going all over the place here, Ethan, but I'm just going to finish this up and then dish it to you. The second lineup, CP3, Devin, Stephon, Jeremy, Wemby. And then you could go Trey, one of Malachi or Blake at the 2. Just let them compete, kind of like we talked about. Keldon, Harrison Barnes, and Zach Collins. But, the offseason is still in flow, Ethan. There's still some potential rumors about Lauri Markkanen. I kind of feel like after we made these moves, I feel like we're set. But at the same time, we're one of those teams that has a lot of assets and it has been connected to that Lauri Markkanen conversation. So I'm not like, I'm kind of in my head, I'm like, okay, there's like a 5% chance that happens. Like, I don't really think that it's going to happen. But at the same time, there is a realistic trade package that I think we could offer them as well.
Yeah, the Laurie thing, I have no idea, to be honest with you. It feels like we were involved in pretty much every trade discussion, every rumor this offseason. The only one that happened to be true is Chris Paul. Even the Harrison Barnes thing kind of came out of left field. Like,
right.
I want to say Brian Wright knew that was going to happen, but something tells me that was just like a spontaneous, who has enough cap space to take this contract on? And it was like, technically the Spurs do. And we were able to swindle an unprotected first-round pick out of that as well, and it worked out in our favor. But I just don't see the Laurie thing happening this year. If I still stand by, a big trade won't happen for another full season, in my opinion. And if there are trades that happen this season at the deadline, it'll be small moves for guys, let's say like Zach Collins. I don't even think that Chris Paul is a guy that we would consider trading at the deadline, unless he's just completely not working out and he's unhappy and he's voicing all these things. I think he's a guy we play out for this entire first year. But getting to the points you made about Harrison maybe coming off the bench and those rotational options, I have no problem with that. I think that he does have the ability to be just a straight up scorer. We saw that especially late in games next to De'Aaron Fox, and then going back to his Golden State days. And he averaged 20 points a game for Dallas back in the day, the year before they got Luka. So he
Mhm.
has, but he can score off the dribble. He can post guys up. He can be a facilitator. He plays well off screen and roll action. Um, I personally just love the defensive upside of having him starting at small forward. I saw a comment earlier. I know he plays a lot of four. I know he's like 6'7", 6'8", so he does kind of play that modern day, small ball four. So off the bench, sure. If CD's not ready, if we aren't able to bring Mamu, that also makes sense. And maybe I'm looking things through kind of an old fashioned way of Spurs, like an old fashioned Spurs
Right.
fan. Like in my opinion, we start veterans. Like if we bring in a veteran, he usually starts, especially if it's a need, right? And Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, point guard, small forward, those are our biggest holes. If we bring them in, I don't think anybody can argue that, other than maybe Kelvin versus Harrison, just based off the stats, but I don't think anyone can argue that the alternative to them starting is a better player. Do you know what I mean? Like, is Trey Jones a better player than Chris Paul? No. Is Blake
Mm.
Wesley? No. Is Stephon a better point guard right now? No. I don't have a problem with Stephon starting at the small forward, but based on what I saw in this first summer league game, and again, I know it's only summer league, take everything with a grain of salt, but I really like his ball handling ability. So I'd like to see him play guard more than forward, um, especially since he looked more comfortable shooting threes off the dribble than maybe catch and shoot opportunities, which is all he would get if he were to play forward for us. So it could go any way. No matter what it ends up being on opening night, I won't be upset. I'll be fine with it. I just think it's more likely that Harrison starts at small forward.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought as well too, Ethan. But what I will say, and that's kind of why I brought up the second lineup, the flip side of starting Stephon at the three is one, you get him getting starting reps. He can guard those guys that we talked about guarding, whether it's a Luka Doncic, whether it's a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, he's still gonna get got this season at
Yeah,
times. He's a rookie, but y'all get what I'm saying there. But the thing that does clear up is the backup four by having Harrison there next to Keldon
yeah,
as well as Zach. It brings some size as well, and then it allows Malachi and Blake to kind of compete for that second spot. But here's the thing: we've still got those two open roster spots. And as much as we do have some intel that we're going to try to bring back Bassey, he's got to clear waivers first for that even to happen. And then even if we do sign him, we still have one open roster spot. And like
mm,
I kind of mentioned earlier when you were dealing with connection issues, maybe that is David Duke Jr. But also maybe that's, a veteran coming in on a vet minimum that wants to play with Victor and could be the backup too.
mm. I wish I had the list in front of me, but my Wi-Fi doesn't work. Of who's still available in the free agency, like because I know there's like some pretty solid names, like veteran guys that you could bring in at pretty much every position that we could discuss, but I don't have that list in front of me.
Yeah. I know Gary Trent Jr., somebody just mentioned him
Oh yeah,
in the comments. I don't think he would necessarily take a minimum. But we do technically still have 8 million in the mid-level exception. So if we wanted to use that on somebody, I think a Gary Trent Jr. Would unfortunately probably cost a lot more than that. But I think that
yeah,
type of player, somebody who's experienced, can come in and just snipe off the bench at that two position, kind of like a Dougie McBuckets that we unfortunately can't get back because we traded him, Ethan. Um,
right.
but yeah, I was for some reason Shetty just popped into my head, but he's not necessarily a two. So, and I don't think we'd necessarily want to move Keldon to the backup two either. But maybe that could be a starting lineup. Trey, or just starting lineup, a backup rotation. Trey, Keldon, Shetty, Harrison, and Zach. But I really don't think we're going to bring back Shetty Osman. But that's just somebody who would actually be in that price range, with where our cap is at. Because we just added 19 million with Harrison Barnes, and he's going to be 20 million next year. And that's why we had to renounce all of these guys that I also mentioned earlier while you were dealing with connection issues, Ethan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That all makes sense. The Spurs will probably just bring back Champagny now that I think about it on a minimum if he's willing to take it, which I think he would be. Like I don't envision another team giving him more than that.
Yes. I think that is a great way to put it, Ethan. So I think we kind of covered all of the rotations there and all the possibilities with that, I really think the biggest question is just if Castle starts. I think if he does, then Harrison Barnes is going to be the backup 4, and if he doesn't, then Harrison will probably be the starting 3, and then Stephon will be the backup 2. So it's
Mhm.
like both of those needs will be addressed regardless of how it pans out. Unless we start Stephon, then it will be probably one of Malachi or Blake. But like I said, also we still have that open roster spot. So that's
Mhm.
kind of the state of the Spurs rotations after these moves, Ethan.
Yeah, and regardless of your opinion of Chris Paul, I think it's pretty much a guarantee that he's going to be starting at point guard. I don't know how many minutes he'll get. He got
Right.
20 per game last year. Maybe it's around there, or if not less than that. Um, but if the big pitch to him from Pop was to prove that he's still an elite level point guard, he's not going to be able to do that off the bench. And he could have gotten a bench role from pretty much any other team that's contending. So the reason he comes here is to, I think, play. So I think that's pretty much a guarantee.
Yeah, and we need somebody to teach our team how to be involved in a competent offense and who can run sets. Like, because a lot of our offense last year was just drive and kick or swing the ball around until somebody can get an isolation bucket. Like, it was not, there were not very many sets run, maybe a few here and there for Victor specifically, and I would almost say that most of the sets we ran, Ethan, were almost more out of the baseline, or out of bounds passes than they were, like Trey Jones coming up and setting something. I mean, that did
Yeah.
happen from time to time, but if Chris Paul is running this offense, we're going to be running like a legit offense, and everybody's what's the word? Everybody's ante is going to be upped. Like, I was thinking about this. Like, Devin Vassell is our age, right, Ethan?
I think so, yeah.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I when I said that, it was kind of rhetorical, but he is. He's 23, 24, right? Maybe a little bit younger than us here or there, but basically the same age. Now you've got Chris Paul coming in running your offense. Like, if I'm Devin Vassell, I'm like, okay, I got to be on my game. Chris Paul is out here running this offense, telling me what to do. On top of that, we've got Victor. But I think that will just kind of raise the level of urgency and intensity for the guys with him in the starting lineup, as well as the potential lobs that he could throw, which is what everybody talked about. Was a big part of Greg Popovich selling him on signing with San Antonio.
Chris Paul has made a lot of average players look very, very good in his day. I don't want to call this guy out, but I will. Clint Capella has not been the same guy since he's left Chris Paul in the Rockets. Same can be said for DeAndre Jordan in the Clippers. Same can be said for DeAndre Ayton in the Suns. And honestly, same could be said for JJ Redick when he played with Chris Paul in the Clippers. So he will elevate pretty much everybody.
For sure, Ethan. Well, any final thoughts on these rotations before we move on to some summer league talk?
No, sir. Let's get it.
Well, Ethan, I'll just dish it to you. 12 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 for 4 from 3, unfortunately in a blowout, just like last night. But there were no CD and Stephon last night. But give me your thoughts on Stephon Castle's technical Spurs debut. And then also, I saw some comments earlier about CD and people being a little bit disappointed in the one game that he's played so far coming off an injury. But what were your thoughts on really just those two guys? Maybe if you want to talk about Jamari Booyah, you could talk a little bit about him. But those are really, the guys who are on this Summer League roster right now who will actually be on the team next season.
I should mention that the team overall didn't look good. Um, First and foremost, we look very bad, and I don't even remember who we actually were playing. Do you remember that off the top of your head,
The
Jude?
Hornets.
The Hornets came out firing, and they wanted to win that game a lot more than we did. Obviously, it looked like we were kind of going through the motions, but Stephon Castle specifically has an unbelievable feel for the game. Anyone that said he is not a point guard, I think we just have to agree to disagree. I mean, he has all the traits of a guy that is a natural playmaker. His feel for the game is incredible. Coming off of screens, he's patient. The only criticism I had really is when he came off the screens, he was pretty much wide open. Like they were giving him that mid range and drop coverage. He could have taken a floater, and I think he only took one floater. For the most part, he was looking for the open man or would just drive away. Like he was a little too conservative in that area of the floor. He probably could have gotten 6 to 8 more points if he had just taken that floater more consistently. But his ability to pass out of the screen and roll, off the dribble, his handle looks so effortless. Like you had talked about when we drafted him, like him versus Jeremy Sochan at point
Right.
guard. different situations because Jeremy Sohan's handle isn't even that good now, and he's been in the league. He's going into his third year. Stephon Castle has that ability right now. I don't even think he lost the ball once, which is shocking because most young guards lose it all the time. Did he have any turnovers, Jude? I don't have the stats in front of me.
I think he might have had 1 or 2. Let me
One or
confirm
two.
that, though.
While you do that, I'll keep going. But aside from that point, his other biggest criticism when we drafted him is shooting. He went 2 for 4. I don't envision he's going to shoot 50% as a rookie in the NBA, but his shot looks smooth. He looks comfortable. He took the shots with confidence.
Just
And if he
1 turnover, not to interrupt you.
No, you're good. Only 1 turnover. I love that. If he can continue to shoot with that level of confidence, I don't know what his percentage will be at the end of this year, but it shows me that he has the upside to be a good shooter. I don't want to predict what his percentage will be, but it won't be whatever it was in college, 20 something percent. That's not going to be a reality. He has that ability, especially off the dribble. Maybe he could use some work as a catch and shoot guy. We haven't seen that yet. Um, Aside from that, defense, we knew that was going to be his strength, and he showed that. He is very versatile defensively. He can switch. He can clamp guys up. He forced a turnover early that resulted in a booyah layup. I think if you look at the stats. The stats are impressive in the limited time. But if you didn't watch the game, I encourage you to go do watch the
Right.
game. Really jumped off the screen, and he did a lot of things that didn't show up in the stat sheet. So I'm extremely impressed with him. And CD Sissoko, I know he had a rough game. I noticed it too. I think he's still coming off of that injury, so things are a little weird.
He had a
And he kind
surgery in May. Like,
yeah, and I don't even think the Spurs want him to play. He's on a minutes restriction. He's kind of forcing himself into
yes.
the so there's all that entire element to it. And he's also like part of what makes him so great is he's a connective piece. I love that you said that last podcast. He is a connective piece. And when you're connecting a bunch of mediocre guys, he's not really, he's going to look subpar. You know what I mean? Like when Boris Diaw is on a team with nobody that's great, like he's not going to jump off the screen. But you put him next to Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, suddenly he's arguably the MVP of the finals in 2014. You know what I mean? Sidi Sissoko, I feel like that's kind of similar to how his game evolves and how he impacts games. And he needs quality players around him. So I'm not going to judge him based on summer league.
Yeah. I mean, I probably will put a little bit more merit. Like, if it's just a real struggle the entire time in Vegas, like, I'm still going to have the injury in the back of my mind as context. And, he's just so young that I'm not going to, like, completely write it off yet. Like, as much as we would like CD to grow into these things and we think he has a high ceiling, he is a second round pick at the end of the day. Like, he was picked lower than Trey Jones. So anything that we get out of him improving in that way is kind of gravy. But I think he's going to play better in Vegas. This is the first game that this team has played together. I know you can say that about all of the teams technically, but like Mohamed Gee, who was the dude who went off for us against the Hornets, he was on a two-way last year with the Hornets. Nick Smith Jr. was a first-round pick. They were on the team together the whole year. Like the only person who was even on the Spurs roster last season who's on the Summer League roster is CD Sissoko. So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not trying to. These past 2 performances have not been great. The past 2 nights, I'm not going to sit here and try to act like it's incredible or anything. But the other thing is David Duke Jr. As of right now, we'll see if maybe any of the moves today changed anything. But as of right now, he will be added to the Vegas Summer League roster. And on top of that, Ethan, I just think that the intensity as well as the reps together in the Sacramento, California Classic I think they'll look better in Summer League after they've played 3 full games together. And, the Vegas Summer League is really like a season, if you get what I'm saying. So it's like they're trying to win those games to, get to the Summer League playoffs, where these California Classic games are just totally like exhibition games. These don't matter if we win or lose. It's just kind of getting a feel and getting the chemistry together. So that's kind of how I've been taking these 3 Summer League games. We do play China tomorrow night. There is not an official word on whether or not CD or Stephon play tomorrow. I hope both of them do, but there is a chance that both of them don't as well. But yeah, Ethan, Jamari Booyah has played both games though. And he is the sole 2-way contract remaining on the Spurs. So if there's no Stephon or CD, there is technically a San Antonio Spurs still out there. And another thing I'll mention, because we traded Raekwon Gray to Chicago, he will not be on our Summer League roster anymore. I'm pretty sure as well.
Dang. He will be missed. The Bobby Portis Jr. experience is over. But just because we didn't just now, Harrison Ingram did play both games. I
Yes, can't believe I forgot that.
Yeah, he looked better in the second game from what I saw. In the first game, he really didn't do all that much, but he looked solid defensively. I'm not going to judge his offense yet. His handle looked slightly better than I thought it was going to. Like he had a couple moments where he had to dribble, just out of like necessity rather than like what the play was drawn up for. And it wasn't as ugly as I had feared because I knew that was like one of his biggest negatives is he's like not a great put the ball on the floor kind of guy. But I think we'll see more from him once, like you said, the rest of the team kind of comes together and we start gelling because he's kind of an off-ball player right now.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll take away from Harrison is regardless of, some things maybe not looking the prettiest with him, I believe he did make a couple threes. It didn't look perfect, but I kind of take in all the context that I just mentioned a second ago with him as well, playing his first NBA games. He was picked even lower than CD. I just used that as an example, but he hustles. Like I think the first game he had 7 boards. He like his motor, I saw him diving on the floor multiple times. Like I said, it's
Hard.
nothing it's nothing crazy. I'm not trying to sit here and act like, he played the greatest game of all time, but you can't teach effort and intensity. You
Yeah.
can teach all the other skill stuff. We've kind of accepted he's going to be probably in the G League for most of the year anyway. And I don't think we've officially signed his contract yet. So, that's somebody who could definitely be one of our two ways, Ethan. I was just thinking about that and those 2 open roster spots when we're talking about that's really making me feel like our guy Harrison is probably going to be a 2-way this year, as most people drafted in the range of his are. So, but last thoughts on him again, just played really hard, man. All the other stuff at the end of the day is we're going to work on developing with him.
Right. Agreed on that two-way point.
Well, Ethan, do you have any other thoughts on the Vegas Summer League? I guess, well, here, let me pose a question to you. I'll go back to this because you were talking about Stephon at point guard.
Mhm.
What was your reaction just like the first time you saw him take the ball up the floor, maybe drive in and then dish a pass out to somebody? Even if it ended up being a hockey assist, like what was your reaction when you saw him with the ball in his hands those first couple possessions? Because I know when I saw that, I was like, okay, no, this dude definitely, this year we're going to have him under CP3's tutelage. You take advantage of the versatility that he showed at UConn. But man, moving forward, because you even saw him, we started him at the 2 yesterday, with Jamari Booyah starting. And another thing, I know I'm going all over the place again, Ethan, but Harrison Ingram was at the 4. I really kind of feel like that is kind of going to end up being his position. But again, back to Stephon. What did you think of him showing that, even not starting at the point guard position?
Dude, I think I literally stood up and just like walked out of the room for a second, shaking my head. And I texted pretty quickly after that my raw thoughts, which I can't repeat here for monetization reasons. But he is everything that we had hoped he would be in only one game of of sample size so far. But even still, he just looks so comfortable, dude. Like dribbling the ball looks so relaxed. Like he was so open on pick and rolls that like he almost looked shocked. He was like, "Man, this is
Yeah.
easy." Like cutting them up with his ability to dribble in and around screens, find the empty space, and then make the right pass. And his passes were crisp and they were on target, like right into shooters' pockets. And had they actually pulled the trigger and been able to hit some shots, he might have racked up a handful of assists more than what he actually ended up with, which was 3. So, I mean, I'm lost for words, really. Like I'm just so happy that we were finally able to get a guy that could dribble the ball well. Like as soon as we
Right.
draft, you know what I mean?
No, totally. And you brought up the point that I made a while back. We were looking at Stephon as a prospect, and we were kind of thinking maybe he could be a point guard. There's some stuff talking about it, and we weren't even completely sold on it at that point, Ethan. But man, like I said, the handle, it's completely different than like a Jeremy Sohan. This is not somebody having to play point guard for the first time in their life. He played it in high school. He's got the size. And I think honestly, bringing in this Chris Paul move where he can kind of mentor him for a year and really show him some things that he hasn't seen from one of the best point guards ever, I think is really going to help him, next year be ready to just take over, and be ready to run the offense. Because while he has all those skills as of right now, there's still some scheme things that he's got to figure out in this first year. So I think incrementally increasing his workload next to Chris Paul throughout the season will only set up the Spurs for a lot of success in the future, especially playmaking wise and at that point guard position. The last thing I'll say about Stephon, the two misses on the threes may have not looked the prettiest, but the two that he made, first of all, shot 50% at 2 for 4. I mean, he made one from dang near Curry range, and I'm not even exaggerating there, and it was a swish. And then he made one in motion off the dribble coming off of a pick and roll. Look, as Lou told us, Ethan, the jumper is a work in progress. It's not perfect, but if that's where we're starting out at, and again, this is just one exhibition summer league game, but still, if you watch those two shots, you're not going to be like, okay, this dude has no shooting potential. He can't play point guard and he can't shoot. That was like our biggest criticisms, right? That was the flip side of people saying that this wasn't a great pick. I think we saw flashes of both of those things and definitely at least potential shown in both of those things in just that first game.
Let's hope he can continue it down the road in this Vegas Summer League. And just to mention this guy real quick, because nobody else will, I actually really liked Jameer Nelson Jr. When they said his name, I was like, oh my God, I love Jameer Nelson. Like, we have his son. And then
and he's our age, too.
Right. And I was like, Jameer Nelson, man. I got to thinking about him and Dwight Howard back in the day on those 2008 to 2012 Orlando Magic teams. They had an unbelievable two-man game. So let's see if we can make him a two-way player, Jude, and see if we can harness some of that Jameer Nelson energy, him and Wemby with the lobs. I mean, my 2K GM
exactly.
My 2K brain is like loving this move. Like, we really bring him in.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to having him on a two-way. I know he's another point guard, but Jameer Nelson in 2K, man, he was insane. But also in the NBA as well, when he was in his prime, he was, as our boy Shawnee Banani says, Jameer Nelson, a GOAT for real.
Damn right.
Well, Ethan, any final thoughts on Summer League before we move on to the main attraction?
No, sir. Let's get on it.
So there's been some other games going on, guys. And they're just exhibition games. But Ethan, I mean, Victor Wembanyama, man. I wish I had more to say. I wish I had more to set that up with. I'm just going to read you his stats. He did not play today in the game against Germany, but here are his stats in the two games that he's played so far. So the first game against Turkey. First of all, Turkey went 1 for 24 on field goal attempts while he was on the floor. So literally, Turkey made one shot while Victor Wembanyama played in 20 minutes. He had 24 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, 2 steals on 10 for 14 shooting. And then in the next game he played, in only 19 minutes against Germany, which is a much tougher team, 27 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 11 for 16 on field goals, 5 for 9 on 3-point field goals, all in 19 minutes.
He's unbelievable, Jude. I don't even know what we're supposed to say at this point anymore because, like, we talk about him every single day. So we know what he is. We knew he was this guy. So, like, the national media people that don't watch him, like, they're shocked. They're baffled. This is just who he is. And we are so lucky to clutch Corey.
He says in the comments, shake my head. He's so good. We so lucky. That's literally how I feel, man. Like, I wish I had more analysis from this, but if you go watch the stuff, his 3-point shot looks insane off the dribble and catch and shoot. Last year you could say there's criticism with catch and shoot. He's showing flashes there. Obviously, the FIBA and Olympic rules definitely favor his play style more, Ethan. But still, the defensive stuff he's doing, when you hold a team to 1 of 24 field goals, I don't care if you have Victor and Rudy Gobert. That's still insane. They're not doing that, without Victor. I mean, look, dude. I mean, this is the biggest thing that I'll say about this, Ethan, is these are both in 20 minutes or less. And it's super efficient. I mean, imagine what he's going to be doing when they don't have him on a minutes restriction. like when the actual Olympics starts. These are just exhibition games. Like he's not even going 100%.
I think I saw one of the comments that
Ooh, Ethan, your
they're
connection is tripping
rooting for
out.
France in the Olympics. They don't even care when it becomes.
Can you
No.
restart? Your connection tripped out there for a second.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Ooh, I can hear
Someone
you.
can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, now we're
Yes.
good. We got you back.
I don't know what's going on. Someone in the comments just said that they're rooting for Team France, like no matter what in this Olympics. If it comes down to USA versus France, obviously I want the US to win, but I would really want Victor to just dominate everybody. You know what I mean? Like I want it to be like USA wins, but Victor drops a 60-point triple double, and it's like the only reason it was a close game.
If they beat Team USA, I'm not going to be mad. I'll just put it that way. Obviously, I'll be rooting for Team USA, but I am not going to be mad at all if they beat Team USA, and that would definitely what's the word? That would be Victor kind of announcing himself coming into this season. Like, hey, I'm taking the gold medals and now I'm coming for the NBA season.
Good luck to him, dude. Good luck to him.
But it's gonna be a really tough Olympics, Ethan. You know, Canada, they are a really stacked team. You can't forget about them. I believe Germany, as much as they just smacked Germany still has a lot of NBA players on their roster. They won the FIBA World Cup last season. I'm forgetting some other teams that are going to be in there, but there's a lot of NBA talent in a lot of these teams. Canada is really the main one that's standing out to me in my mind, but there's going to be, it won't even be just Team USA. They're going to have some challenges. It won't be exhibition games. The ante will be upped. So we'll see for sure if that's what ends up happening. But if he dominates like he's dominating in these exhibition games, it would not surprise me if we see a Team USA France final.
Dude, let's be honest. If this Team USA loses, it's going to be the biggest like upset in the history. Like, this was
No, for real.
because we have so many Hall of Famers. Like this might be the best team since the Dream
Team.
Yeah.
Too Clutch Corey says USA has an easy group as well. So, you know, they'll be well rested. Nobody's going to have the depth that they do. And that's kind of why I brought up Canada, because they might be like the only team that's like necessarily comparable to the US when it comes to just like NBA depth. Like they're probably going to have Nickeil Alexander-Walker coming off the bench, for example, on top of, you know, RJ Barrett, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, Kelly Olynyk is another name. I'm forgetting some other guys. I don't know if Zach Edey's going to play. That will be something that would be very interesting to see.
Don't forget
who am I forgetting?
Your favorite
player. You're cutting out again, Ethan. Oh no, connection issues again for Ethan. We were doing so good, guys. Okay, I heard Dylan Brooks.
Hear me now?
I only heard Dylan Brooks coming out of that. Okay, now we got you back, Ethan.
We got me back.
Well,
Dylan Brooks, all I was saying.
Dylan Brooks, can't forget about Dylan Brooks. But Doria the Exploria says that Zach Edey is not playing in the Olympics, unfortunately. I believe Dwight Powell is another name that will be in there. But hey, look, it's NBA depth in comparison to other places.
Dwight Powell and Kelly Olynyk versus Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid. It's wraps.
I'm forgetting one of Canada's bigs. They have somebody else other than that, but still, to your point. That is why Victor is probably having a much better chance than Canada. They will have to just snipe outside shots. But yeah, it probably will just be a runaway for the US. But it would be cool to see. I want to see Victor play as long as possible. That's the last thing I'll say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Before we end, Ethan, there's some other stuff that we can talk about. Do you want to mention some of the highlights that we saw? As much as Poland was eliminated from the FIBA qualifying tournament, or FIBA, I say FIBA, the FIBA Olympic qualifying tournament. What were your thoughts on some of the defensive highlights and offensive highlights that you saw from Jeremy Sochan? Just in, you know, making some good plays. Victor commented on one of his, you know, kind of one-on-ones that he had and called it psycho defense. What were your thoughts on Jeremy's play in the Olympic qualifying tournament?
I don't know how much we could truly take away from it because Team Poland's not exactly the greatest team in the world, but he did look more comfortable handling the ball. I thought was the biggest improvement offensively from him. He just looked a little bit better, a little more clean, less loosey goosey with the ball. And then defensively, we know he's this guy mentally, but it looks like he might have gotten a little bit quicker laterally, which is truly scary for every power forward in the league if he's able to move that quickly to defend a guard, like he did in that clip that you are referring to when Victor Wembanyama said psycho defense. So if he's able to continue that mentality, take the confidence he's gotten offensively from these games into training camp and into the regular season, I'll be pleased. But I don't all of a sudden think he's going to be a 20 points per game guy or anything like that. Like we
Right.
didn't Olympics, but I think he will be a cleaner player with fewer mistakes and probably he. It looked like he had a small hitch in his jump shot. I don't know if that's different or like I don't know if it's like what
That's
he
a
was.
whole other thing. There's people talking about that maybe potentially being a drill. I think I even did see him like actually swish one. Um,
I didn't too
I'm
much, but
just I'm so I'm gonna wait until next season with that to comment on that. But the defense specifically, and what you mentioned about him looking cleaner, maybe some more lateral quickness, just having a greater sense of urgency and intensity, kind of like I alluded to with bringing in Chris Paul. Jeremy talked about that, just having Victor on the team that kind of added to him. So for him to say that and then show flashes of that, high energy intensity, um, that's what I like to see. Because honestly, in this starting lineup, regardless of what it ends up being, Ethan, we're not going to be asking Jeremy Sochan to do a bunch offensively. Like we're probably going to be asking him to maybe take an open three every once in a while. And really, I think now that you bring in Harrison and CP3, I really think Jeremy's role on that starting lineup, Ethan, if he's there, is offensively at least, is he's just going to kind of be a rim crasher on the offensive boards, try to get
Mhm.
putbacks or just fight for boards and pass it back out to reset a set. Because when you have a CP3, a Devin Vassell, and regardless of whether it's Harrison or Stephon, but especially if it's Harrison in the starting lineup. I mean, those are three shooters on top of Victor as well, and his shooting is looking better, as we just alluded to with the Olympics. That's probably four at least solid shooters, average or above average shooters on the floor next to Jeremy. So again, I don't think that I think he would definitely be kind of just crashing the boards and trying to get second chance opportunities or taking, or get putbacks as well if he has the opportunity there. Does that make sense?
For sure. His role is going to be exactly the same as Aaron Gordon's for the Nuggets offensively.
You and Doria the Exploria, y'all are
Probably
right on the money here. He says it at the same time you do. Jeremy could play the Aaron Gordon dunker role. And that's exactly my point. And what do we see from Aaron Gordon from time to time, Ethan? As much as I don't think Jeremy's shot is anywhere close to his, but we did see Aaron Gordon kind of improve his three-point shot throughout his career. But the bigger point I'm getting at is Aaron Gordon will take the open threes when they give them to him. That's
correct.
really all we want from Jeremy. And we want to see that percentage just, get a little bit better, just like it did last year.
For sure.
Well, Ethan, that kind of wraps up our rundown here. Do you have any final thoughts on any Spurs news, this Vegas Summer League that we've got coming up, the Olympics, kind of all of that meshed together?
Uh, no, man. I think that's it. I saw someone in the comments mention our Spaniard. Is he playing in the Olympics? Do you know that?
Are you
Juan
talking about Juan Nunez? Yes, he will be. And he says shades of Ginobili. And he also signed a contract with Barcelona. It is confirmed that he will be stashed. And not to just repeat this over and over again, Ethan, but I'll put it to you this way. If we signed Juan Nunez to our roster this season, he was going to be in the G League anyway. And the Euro League, bluntly, is better competition than the G League. He's going to get better playing for Barcelona in the Euro League. There's going to be it's going to be better for skill for skill, the players he's playing against, the schemes, the sets, all of that stuff, and the crowd environments. I mean, he's
Right.
actually going to be playing in high intensity games, and he wasn't going to play this year anyway. And the thing that works, and as we've seen before, Ethan, maybe we never end up bringing these guys over. I think Juan Nunez has a higher chance than maybe like Nikola Milutinov, who we mentioned in the past. But still, at the end of the day, I think it's a good decision to stash him, especially since he just signed that contract and that is a much lever. That is going to get him more ready for the NBA than playing in the G League for a year.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, Ethan, thank you for battling through all of your technical difficulties. Thank you, everybody else, for staying with us through the technical difficulties. And I think, the thing is, Ethan, we learned that if this ever happens again, now we know how to fix it.
Yeah, just go straight to the phone. Don't even bother with Wi-Fi like that. Just go I don't know what's going on. Like, everything's connected. My app says I'm clean. I don't. I'll figure it out. I'll be better next week.
Well, once again, we appreciate all y'all being in here. Enjoy the Summer League game tomorrow night. And let me see, our first game for the Vegas Summer League will be this Saturday. So probably when we hit you guys back with our next episode, we will also just be talking about a bunch of Spurs games. And maybe there'll be some more resolution with this roster as well, Ethan.
You never know. We will find out.
Okay, last comment here. Shawnee Banani says, have you heard the Jeremy Sochan song? I have. You probably have not, Ethan. Everybody go look up the Jeremy Sochan rap song. There's like this Polish rapper. This is from like a minute ago, honestly. But Jeremy's in the video. And
I saw it.
If y'all have not seen it, y'all got to go check out the Jeremy Sochan song. He also got a new sports drink, apparently. I don't know if that's available in the U.S., but I saw that on Twitter today, and it's like got his face on it.
Yeah, he's got a perfect face for sports drinks. I've been saying it for years.
He's got the rap song. He's got the sports drink. He's basically Victor. He's actually not, because Victor doesn't do any of that stuff. But Jeremy's getting big time, is my point.
Yes, he is. He's a marketing person's dream, honestly, to have Jeremy Sochan.
Couldn't agree more, Ethan. Okay, final thought, final question. Will we see multiple, and this is a very way too early question. Will we see Jeremy Sochan bust out the multiple hair colors ever again?
Oh.
Because he went full blonde last season the whole year, changed it from the year prior where it was like different every month.
I bet he does. I bet once we actually start winning, I bet he does it again.
I think so too. And I think you'll start seeing all the Rodman comparisons and everything too, especially with the role that we kind of talked about as well. But Ethan, with all that being said, we appreciate all you guys coming in here and hanging out with us. And again, thank you for working through the technical difficulties as well. You guys can see we do everything we can, even if it's in the moment, to do our best to get the content out in the best way possible. So once again, we appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button below. You can also follow us on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero to stay updated with the show. And if you would like to support the show, it's going to be coming out more soon, Ethan. The Hemisphere merch will not be here much longer, but these hats, other stuff, if you'd like to support the show that way, we'd greatly appreciate it as well. Pretty solid quality, all that stuff. But yeah, we're going to be having some new merch coming when we come out with a new logo for this next season. So get that while you can. But once again, we appreciate you guys. Go Spurs.